So we're back where we started, asking the question whether we can build learning organisations in policing. And in dodging the question one more time, I think my response has to start with recognition that we may not want to. This is a choice we have to make. We might be quite comfortable operating in our lane, playing the policing equivalent of hitting the hamster on the head for arcade, and dealing with symptom after symptom. We're structured for that. We've gotten really good and more effective at doing that over time. And that may be all our societies and our politicians want us to do. We might be happy to continue with the learning organisation light approach, the diet version, limited to improving our abilities to encourage and harness critical thinking and problem solving within our current settings. Systems thinking with a firm single loop learning policey lens. All of which, of course, is completely valid. Although if I've done my job correctly today, I think you'd agree that this is not reflective of the spirit of the learning organisation. And I would question mark whether such settings adequately prepare us for VUCA, allow us to operate in an environment of complex problems, strategically positions us for the fourth industrial revolution, and for the social and political expectations of the future. So if we want our profession to advance further down this learning organisation agility route, and if we want to give greater consciousness to the learningful activities and learningful efforts that we're currently engaging on, what can we do? All signs point to the importance of leadership. But given I work for an institute dedicated to leadership development, I would say that, wouldn't I? And I could spend the next 40 minutes talking about all the things that hold us back from becoming learning organisations, unpacking the things we might do to remedy this, our addiction to success and our allergy to failure, for example, our need to act and do instead of observe and think, our authorising environment, high levels of accountability demanded in part of us because of the way we've breached trust in the past, an anti-intellectual culture where credibility rests heavily on doing it tough on the street, our human need to fit in with the pack, our tendency to inhibit difference in thinking, and our leaders' irrational fear of even courteous insubordination. And of course, our tendency, developed over a lifetime inside and outside of policing, to depend on our leaders for direction, protection, and to create a sense of order. In short, we could explore that healthy policing. It's an awful long way to the start line to becoming an integrated learning organisation. But because I'm generally an optimist, and because it's a season of goodwill, I want to finish by talking more generally and more positively about the kinds of things we can do to nudge ourselves in the right direction. And from a leadership perspective, I think much of this rests on a reinterpretation of what we mean by leadership in policing, from which we can start to involve the systems, the processes, and the cultures that enable us to choose to engage on systems thinking, double loop learning, and with that create learning organisations. And I'm talking about the difference between leaders and leadership. Traditionally, when we talk about leadership, we mean the characteristics and behaviours of an individual in a position of authority. They might be transformational in their approach, or they might adopt a servant leadership style, or they might be transactional or dictatorial. In all cases, leadership is conceptualised as the way that one individual gets other people to do what it is they want them to do. Leadership is the property of the individual, others are brought along for the ride. A different way to think about leadership is to consider it as an outcome of the system. It emerges from individuals interacting with each other and producing new ways of operating. It is the property of the group. Now, leadership in this sense is a group process of shared responsibility and mutual influence in which team members lead each other toward goals. Power and influence are not centralised in the hands of a single individual who acts in the clear role of dominant superior. And there is a reliance on the informal influence exerted up, down, and across by others in the team. Now, this second interpretation of leadership is sometimes called shared leadership, and it's characteristic of the kind of work we need to do when we don't know what we're doing. Like, for example, when we're dealing with dynamic complexity. Like, for example, when we're operating in a VUCA environment. Like, for example, when our leaders are feeling less of the déjà vu and much more of the vuja day. And like, for example, we need to operate if we're going to create agile learning for organisations that can sense, response and adapt to the system in which they sit. This type of leadership, and it may come as no surprise to you, can be challenging for hierarchical organisations that are wedded to individual notions of leadership that revolve around power and control. And where individuals are rewarded for using power and control effectively with even higher office. There is a vested interest in retaining command and control if you've gotten to the top that way yourself. And even more so if you know that ultimately it's going to be your head ceremoniously placed on a spike when the wheels come off. Yet shared leadership is associated with high performance and greater success in complex situations. Command and control simply doesn't cut it when you're dealing with complexity, because the interconnectedness and the volatility involved would vex even the most accomplished of technical experts. I say you do is only useful if you know what it is you've got to say. And in complex environments, we need more intellectual grunt than one person can provide. And we therefore need to work inside and outside of our organisations to create an environment in which people give of their ingenuity freely.